I struggled the last couple of times with the name of this lecture. So, as part of week 2 of Pathwork Lecture 107, which is 3 aspects that prevent loving. This week, we're looking at number 1 aspect. And in the materials, I have brought in the concepts of reason, will, and emotion because they tend to match up. And aspect 1 in Pathwork Lecture 107 is lists disconnection when used as a form of separation. And from the text, I believe that the guide, if you're talking about personality types as well, the guide is referring to self-will personality aspects in this. And there have been several discussions this week about why, because in the charts that I use for reason, pollen season. In the charts that I use to explain reason, will, and emotion, one of the defenses of the reason type is withdrawal. And disconnection and withdrawal sound very similar. And as we've been working on in the groups, the idea is you want to notice the aggression in disconnecting versus the defense movement of withdrawal. Withdrawal is meant to protect yourself, not deal with anything out there. I just need to take care of me. I just need to pull back a little bit. Whereas disconnection is somewhat aggressive. I am going to disconnect me from my feelings. I am going to disconnect from your use of feelings. It's taking more action. And that's why it's more of a self-will defense or action than a reason defense. And part of the reason for this confusion is that words can be used in multiple ways. And so it is important to notice the energy with which the words are used. What I find is that people can say something with words and technically it sounds correct. What I hear, a little bit of clairaudience going on, but what I hear is I hear a different energy than that word normally carries, or that slants a word a certain way. The term that we use is the word is charged. The word is carrying a loaded meaning that it wasn't specifically designed to carry. So that if you misuse a word, you can charge it with that meaning. And I want to say you can get away with it. Why? Because people understand what you're saying. They're not fooled necessarily by what you're saying, but they can hear, I'm going to use music as an example. They can hear 3 notes at a time and hear a tone out of that. And communication works in ways that we may not realize that it works. But when you have a misunderstanding about something, and we rely on, but I understand disconnection this way, that's where misinterpretations can happen. It's one of the reasons why I have learned to go to an online dictionary. I use American Heritage Dictionary online, ahdictionary.com. And I actively use it in sessions and in group meetings when I think that the problem is that we're not communicating well because they mean something using a word and I understand the word differently. And so I take a moment, I go to the dictionary, I offer what is usually a neutral definition, and most of the time they can see that that's not exactly what they meant. So they could use the word that way, but it wasn't the best word for the purposes. We're not all wordsmiths. I envy poets and writers. I just clumsily get through a phrase most of the time. So aspect 1, that was a bit of a side thing. Aspect 1, the first way that we prevent loving is to disconnect. And that's an aggressive act, either internal or external. So all I wanted to do was just run through the logic of why I included reason, will, emotion literature with this and references, and why I felt that the disconnection here referenced the self-will defense. So there are charts in the study guide that I find very useful. And as I've been sharing, I found that personality types of reason, will, and emotion, Pathwork Lecture 43, unlocked the reason why people behaved differently, had different agendas, why their words belied their energy actions. And all of a sudden, I was more able to straighten out what people wanted and how they were trying to get it, and how to interact with them without sending them into defense. So that's why I found it handy. So that if you want to love someone and they're going into one of these three aspects, if you know what they're doing, then you might be able to coax them into not doing it as much. In other words, soften up on this without using these words, lighten up on the disconnection, see if you can afford to feel some of your feelings or some of what I'm trying to say emotionally. Let's see if we can find a compromise here rather than your isolating yourself, which makes it very difficult for me to communicate with you. So hopefully that makes a little bit of this clear, and we'll go back to the discussion.